Hi, my name is Joy Koff, and welcome to these interviews that I am calling Messages of Joy. It is my great pleasure to have with us today a psychic medium from the Dallas-Fort Worth area who also travels all across the United States. His name is John Cappello. Welcome, John.
Hi, Joy. How are you?
I am fine.
Good. Thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's get started with how did you get started as a psychic medium? And is that the title that you use today, or do you use any other titles?
Well, I got started with this kind of work. I guess I've always had a fascination with it as a child, but I really got started with it after the death of my father, and it was after his death that I met a few people that were in the field, and I started to take some classes, and I found out that I had an affinity for it. I found out that I just had a natural ability to see spirits and to actually pick up information, imprinted information that was on objects,
Hmm.
and so I was pretty detailed, and I found that people that I respected in the field thought that my work was extraordinary, was very good, and I hesitated to use any of those abilities for many years. Actually, I waited about 5 years before I did anything with it. And finally, I decided, well, maybe this is something that I should concentrate on. And I happened to be in between careers at the time, and I had been doing this as a hobby for many years. And I decided to stick with the term psychic medium because it more accurately describes what I do. And a lot of other people change their name, or they call themselves intuitives, or they may call themselves even mentalists to some degree, or they are life coaches. But I feel like being a psychic medium is probably the best term for what I do. Who knows? That may change at some point in time, but right now, psychic medium seems to be the best and most accurate term to use for the kind of work I do.
So when did you begin doing this professionally?
Well, it's like I say, I practiced for 5 years. I started professionally in 1997. I went another 11 years before I went full time. So I started in 2008 to go full time. And it was then that I started writing books, and I started radio programs, and I started making other appearances. And it was shortly thereafter that I started to travel. I traveled to Houston,
Mhm.
and then I expanded to other places like Abilene, Texas, and Shreveport, Louisiana, and then I went to Oklahoma, and now I go to Kansas, and I go to Tennessee, and I've made appearances in Maine and Washington State, Arizona, a lot of different places. I've even been out of the country to demonstrate my work, and I've won acclaim everywhere. So I've been very blessed with a lot of people acknowledging my work and my talent.
So what motivates you to do this?
Well, I found that the work helps people, and
Right.
I feel like that needs to be the motivation for anything that you do, not just making a living, which is
Mhm.
always nice, but 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 when you are helping someone, and someone gains a little bit of insight, or you see that they are growing from your work emotionally, it's very gratifying, and it's very much a way for me to find fulfillment too. I find that I learn a lot about myself. I learn a lot about my skills and my personality. I learn a lot about the kind of person that I am, and so I feel like I help others, and or not me helping others. It's the
Right.
gift, because it's what I share from what I sense around a person, that is what is important. So that's why I do the work, so I can help others.
So how do you connect to spirit? I mean, is there some sort of preparation that you go through before you teach a workshop or before you do a session?
Well, spirit is always with me.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of paying attention. And uh, some people have said that I'm a little aloof at times, and I guess I'm always surprised when they say that because I'm just sensing what's around me, and there's a lot around me, and there's a lot around other people, and so if I am in a room and I see someone walk into that room and they're followed by angels or ETs or other spirits, I acknowledge them. I notice them, and uh, I find that that's how I connect. I'm always kind of connected. There are times when there are some physical um, sensations. Have been pushed by spirits. I notice them as maybe a breeze that comes over, or a cold spot, or even a warm spot. There's a lot of ways that spirit does communicate with me. I just pay attention. So that's the main thing, because spirit is all around us. At least from my perspective, it is.
So I'm going to go into a little bit of detail. Some people, they're familiar with like John Edwards and things of that nature. So how are your sessions different than John Edwards? Now I'm going to tell you from my own personal experience, I think you're kind of better than John Edwards, but
He's the king.
I know, I know. But what
Well,
I noticed is you really come up with a lot of I want to say precise detail about people, especially people that have crossed over, that he doesn't necessarily pull in that I see from his sessions.
well, I've never met Mr. Edwards. I never met him. We all are different. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and if you put us side by side, and we both did blind readings with people, he might get information that I didn't get, and I might get information that he didn't get. I always am cautious to say that one psychic is better than another,
Mm-hmm.
because it just depends on the energy that they have sensed at that particular time. So I can't tell you if I'm any better or worse than any other psychic. I can only go by what clients say, and
Right.
and if I could be so blessed to have the following of a John Edwards, that would be just wonderful. But I certainly have a great deal of respect for his work, and I
Mm-hmm.
would have no idea if I'm a better psychic or medium than he is. That's just really for other people to say, and not for me. But thank you. I
So,
appreciate.
what can someone expect during a session with you? If someone schedules a private session with you, what is it that they can expect? Is it going to be mediumship? Is it going to be psychic? Or is it a little bit of both?
Well, the first thing, when someone comes to see me, we both have expectations. The client has an expectation, and I have an expectation. Uh, it's important that a client come to me with an open mind, because in the event that they are not open minded, or they think that, oh, this guy's a fraud, or this guy is not for real or something, then I'm probably not going to get anywhere with them. Because if they have a mindset that is not open to spirit, then there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, I can be dead on and tell people, the most detailed things or intimate details of their life. But if they say no, then I don't have the verification. I don't have any way of verifying it. So when someone comes to me, I want to know as little as possible about them. I generally do not like to chit chat with anyone. I I know a lot of people will send me an email and they want to quiz me via email about certain things, or they want to tell me about their life experience, and I always say no, because the less I know, the better. And that way it is more authentic. That way it is something that they can count on. But even that being said, sometimes the information is on the periphery, it's on the
Mhm.
edge, and it's up to interpretation. And I can give a lot of examples about that, and then there's a lot of things that people don't remember when they're in a reading
Mhm.
because of the lights, the camera, the spotlight of being in the reading. Um,
Right.
but another thing that they can expect from me, or one thing that they can expect from me, is that I'll ask them if I can hold an object, and it needs to be an object that has an imprint on it. I've had people, you know, unfortunately, people spend money to try to fool you at
Mhm.
times. Uh, it's not often, but if you just go to the store and you buy an object and say, "I'm going to let John Cappello read it for me," well, the sales lady might get a great reading, but you won't. but I mean, I'm pretty good at picking up imprints, but bring something that you're the exclusive owner on, or it's owned, or the person that you want to try to contact has imprinted it, and then I can give you some of that residual information that is on the object.
Mhm.
So I know I'm giving you a long answer here, but it's really uh, a unique situation with each person. You can get a psychic and a mediumship reading. You can get a mixture. It's important that people understand the difference between a psychic reading and a mediumship reading.
Right,
A
right.
psychic reading involves energy that is exclusively around you. So it's about your career, about your relationship in your life. It's about your health. It's about what's going on around you. Whereas mediumship is about an entity that is outside of your personal space, and that could be a relative. Excuse me. It could be a guide. It could be an angel. It could be an ET. Mediumship involves being able to communicate with an entity that is not part, like I say, of your personal space,
Mhm.
and it's part of their journey, their choice to communicate or to allow me to see information that they choose to give me. So, so they may choose to give someone like a John Edward different information,
Right.
and that information could be very, very correct, and then I get information that's completely different, which is also correct, but might be in different time frames of their life. Just different things. It depends on which string of energy, if you want to call it, is I'm sensitive to when the entity or the person in spirit tries to communicate with me. So. So to answer your question, there's a lot of things that go on in a reading. I do ask for feedback or validation. I don't try to ask a lot of questions unless they are pointed to a specific answer or something that I see, because I want
Mhm.
to verify that the information I receive is correct. Now, when I give readings, I use all of the psychic abilities. I use what I know, what I see, what I hear, what I feel. Sometimes fragrances come. Sometimes I might get a taste in my mouth. I try to be sensitive and say everything so that the client will get the full experience of what is going on. So I've been doing it now, like I say, since 1992 as a hobby and professionally. So I've been pretty successful with it. So I'm real pleased to be able to give my readings to people, and I can give them over the phone just as accurately, sometimes more accurately, because I just work with a sound imprint.
Right. I have so tell me about some of the workshops that you offer.
Well, I have a variety of workshops. I have my own psychic development workshops that I call psychic journeys. I have a mediumship workshop series that I call Sitting with Spirit. And then I have a larger workshop series that I call Metaphysics for Life. It includes some of my other passions that I like to talk about. The biggest one, of course, is astrology for me. I enjoy it very much. I'm a Western astrologer, and I often ask people what their birth signs are because I kind of know what's going on with the different signs in a general basis. Uh, and so I do astrology workshops. I do crystal skulls because I enjoy the being around the crystals and crystal balls and things like that. It's kind of a hobby of mine to sometimes pick up a crystal or a crystal skull in the different cities or places that I'm visiting so that I create a memory and capture some of that energy of the moment that I was there. And then, of course, with crystals, the owner or the custodian comes to them. Not everybody, and they kind of communicate to you what if they're for you. I know it's a little woo-woo, but it's kind of fun too. And then I have palmistry, I have numerology, I have angel workshops, I have meditation workshops, just different things like that that I work on. And I try to have something new all the time. I have a chakra workshop, an aura workshop, and I often bring those workshops to the places that I go to. And one of the reasons why I do the workshops is because there's so much mythology about how these uh, disciplines work, and I try to bring out some of the hocus pocus of them. And I want people to learn the right way. I want them to learn the standard way, so that if they have a further interest in it, they'll be able to have a proper basis and know that there's no uh, power that someone else is exerting over them, or it's just done the right way. That's all that I'm saying, and something for enjoyment, something for entertainment. So those are just some of the workshops that I have. We've done a few of them on your webinar series, and I may develop my own series later on, but right now I don't have them on video, but I have my books, which are centered around some of my workshops, and I have new books that I'm preparing that will cover some of the other workshops that I do.
So tell us the titles of the books that you've published.
Okay, my first book was called "Open the Mind, Exercise the Soul," and it won several awards, national, international acclaim, and it is a book about psychic development. It's a book about my experiences and how things work with me. And it's about my philosophy about psychic ability, why it's natural, why it's something normal. It brings in topics that are controversial about the way religion looks at psychic ability, about how there's the gamut of opinions from being fully supportive to saying that psychic ability is evil and not to be approached at all. So there's a gamut of philosophies and ideologies about psychic ability, and Open the Mind, Exercise the Soul talks about those things. It also tries to put a philosophical basis to psychic ability, and just kind of reassures people that being psychic is part of being fully human.
Mhm.
And my second book is a takeoff of the first. It's a workbook. It's called Soul Exercises for the Open Mind. And it gets a little bit more into a workbook setting. It goes through exercises to develop clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, so on and so forth. And I developed a little tool I call Psychic Minutes. And those Psychic Minutes are just exclamation points or little facts that people can use in their life to kind of remember tidbits about developing their own psychic skills. It has also won several awards for its content and for the material in it, and for the exercises. And the next book I wrote is a book that I'm really proud of because I feel like I touched on some things that no one else has really touched on, at least not in the metaphysical world. And I'm keeping with the open the mind theme, and I call Open the Mind, Heal the Heart. And it is a metaphysical discussion about grief and healing. And what it does is it goes through the mechanics of grief, and it goes through the different types of grief that we all experience. And it is loosely connected to astrology. And the reason why it was done that way was because astrology is a universal template for the human experience. And so astrology allows us to see our strengths and weaknesses as a species. For instance, if you look at the sign of Aries. The sign of Aries is all about self. It's all about self-image. It's about willpower. It's about so many things about and even injury to yourself, the physical body. Well, if you look at those things, all of us there can be grief associated with those areas, and uh, and so there are these things that we can look at and say, sometimes people lose their willpower in life, or they lose their self-esteem, or if they have a personal injury. Uh, if you're tied up in bed, or not tied up in bed, but if you're laid up in bed over an extended period of time because you are in a car accident, or you've had some other type of situation which forces you to go through a long recovery period, there is not only the healing process, the physical healing process, but there's the emotional healing process, which involves some grief. And people don't see that maybe as an area of grief, but it is. And I mean, even times when you catch the flu, and you got things to do, and I don't have time to be sick, that sort of thing. But when it affects you, it puts you behind, and causes you to be sad. There's a sadness there. But not only do we need to identify the sources of grief, we have to indicate, or we have to find sources of healing. And what I found that some of the sources for healing is virtue. And virtues, by the fact that we can exhibit virtue, we can heal. For instance, if you are not well, one of the ways to get well is to have a positive attitude, or to have motivation, and to be and belief in yourself. These are virtues. These are things that you have to do in order to move forward. And then you look at other forms of grief, and I won't get into the entire book, but if you look at people who have recovered from virtue or from grief, you will see that they have exhibited certain virtues, whether it's being magnanimous, whether it is forgiveness, whether it is having a sense of wonder or a sense of beauty. All of these things are virtue, and it needs to be said. Because I don't see those things being said. We oftentimes turn to medication, or we just go to a counselor, or we just put it in the hands of another person to help us heal. And those things may be necessary. My book doesn't preclude not doing those things, but I'm saying that we need to exert different virtues in order to move ahead. And before I finish with that book, I just want to say one other thing. And for instance, sometimes people lose a loved one due to a disease, or due to some kind of horrible incident. And what they do is they may create a foundation um, that addresses that particular situation. For instance, if you look at the American Cancer Society, or you look at some of these other major organizations that cater to a specific area, uh, those are ways that people heal. They heal by helping others um,
Right.
uh, cope and deal with different problems. These are things that this book, Open the Mind, Heal the Heart, talks about. It's just an observation, but it's something that I think is important. And then my last book was something that I think is important. I'm going to be doing I did a children's book. It's the first in my Angels Pop series, Pop Culture. And the book is entitled Mom, There's an Angel in the Kitchen. And it's won 4 awards so far. And it's a fun little book. It's about a little boy that sees an angel in the kitchen. His mother doesn't believe him, and there's certain signs that there's something going on in the kitchen, and even the dog sees something in the kitchen. And one day Mom walks in and she sees this angel there, and this angel reminds her that when she was a little girl, she heard this poem. And I won't recite the poem to you, but the poem is basically about how to live your life. You know, if you're humble and kind, you'll grow up just fine, and if you're strong and if you try to stay pure, you'll always be sure. That sort of thing. But it's a fun little poem, something that I think people will enjoy. It's also won several awards, like I said. So I'm proud of those, and I'm going to be developing the Angel Pop series because I think it's important that people understand. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. I think people need to understand that children need to be exposed to spirituality and understand that angels are a part of our lives. So those are my books so far. I do have others that I plan to create, but I don't have I don't have them available right now for this interview. So sorry, I took so long, but you asked.
That's all the time we have today, John. So I want to thank you for joining us. And we will talk soon.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Joy.
Thank you.